Good morning, Bethan.
Hi Paul,
Hey.
how are you?
Yeah, very good. A bit tired. Been a quite busy week. How about yourself?
You're not too quizzed out, are you?
It's been three quizzes in the last week. It's been a lot, but yeah, it's been good fun, and it's been good to have some sort of routine of certain days doing certain things, and then fitting client work between that. So how have
Yeah,
you?
I was gonna say I've actually up until this last week I've done really well with what day it is and sort of schedules and things like that. But this last week I don't know what my sort of I think I tried to sort of create a new hashtag called Days Haze because I really struggled this last week. So yeah, it's sort of like that midweek, couldn't decide Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. It was it was really tricky this last week. So
Yeah, I did think of an idea at 3 in the morning, which with hindsight, I could have invented like a COVID calendar, advent calendar with chocolates. So you know what day it was. I thought about that afterwards. A bit too late now.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah. So,
yeah,
so
no, I was gonna say, nobody wants a second wave, do they? But if there
no,
was one, you've got
yeah.
your marketing things ready.
Got things already, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to know you quite very well over the last sort of year, 18 months. For those that don't know you, if you'd like to introduce you and your business and kind of your experience in the last kind of, I guess, 8, 9, 10 weeks, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Bethan Turner and I run a small business called All About You, and I offer events and marketing and PR services to businesses. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who look after those sorts of things, but I guess my sort of USP is that I really work with some very small businesses and not-for-profit organisations and charities. So a lot of the people that I work with don't have a huge amount of money to spend, and they tend to be hugely time poor. They are so busy doing the do that they haven't got time to shout about it. And sort of particularly when you are a small business or a charity, it is so important to reinforce your brand and to get your message out there. And when I talk to particularly the charities that I work with, sort of a lot of them have said, oh, I've been down the pub and somebody says, oh, what do you do then? And I explain what our charity does, and everyone goes, oh my gosh, I've never even heard of you. Wow, gosh, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
so really through my business, what I try to do is actually to allow those businesses and those charities to actually feel the sort of the warm glow of the spotlight, because one, it gets their message out there, but secondly also it can be really confidence building, and charities love nothing better than somebody saying, oh wow, you're doing such a good job, keep up the good work. But if nobody knows about that good work, then nobody's ever going to say that. So that's really really the sort of the aspect of my business.
Yeah, and I think it is, and it's very tough. As I spoke to you before, and other people in marketing, and it often is hardest to do your own marketing. But if you are so busy doing your own things, it's hard sometimes to take a step back and also look at the work you're doing, the difference it's making. But also it's things that maybe you come to you as in an instant, just everyday things But for other people, you've got a chance to really showcase that value and expertise to a wider audience.
Yeah, definitely, and sort of one of the things that I very often do at the start of working with a particular organisation or a business or charity is actually I always ask them to bring their diary with them to our first meeting and actually just go through the diary of what they've done over the last few weeks, few months, what's coming up, and actually just really show them how there are so many stories inside that diary where actually they've just probably thought that it's pretty run of the mill, and well, who'd want to hear about that? And I think it's and it's really sort of drawing those stories out and allowing them to be told. And I think particularly at the moment, the few of the organisations I work with are paused at the moment because they can't carry out the work that they normally do. I look after some theatre groups, and much as they're still around, they can't rehearse together. Social distancing doesn't work when you're trying to do a love scene, and most of their performances, thankfully, have been postponed until next year, so these things are still going to be going ahead, but it's also just trying to keep them in the spotlight, to make sure people just don't think that they've closed or they've gone away. And as you know, with marketing, you know, you do have to keep yourself in people's you know, in the forefront of people's minds, because otherwise it's so difficult to sort of, you know, work your way back to where you were before. And that's the same with you know, with some of the charities that I look after as well. They can't necessarily do a huge amount of active fundraising at the moment. You know, some of the big fundraising events like the London Marathon and things like that have been postponed now. But you know, there've been you know, campaigns like the 2.6, where, you know, sort of where particularly smaller charities have tried to get some of their staff and some of their followers to just do small things to try and continue that the flow of money coming in. And what I've tried to look at is the fact that, you know, these give those businesses, those organisations and charities the opportunity to actually tell some new stories, and some stories that are relevant to now.
No, that's great, and I love the point you mentioned a couple of times on the stories and the storytelling, and you know, the businesses that I work with, it is documenting your story, and even from the starting point, when people look to launch a business, I know that, you know, I launched mine. It was you. It's about, you said, all about you, your business name, and particularly if you're a sole trader and you're starting up, people need to be a part of your journey, and they will warm to you, they'll get to know you, and I didn't really appreciate that so much when I first started, how much of an impact it made on growing my business. And if you look back to even like you know, global brands like Innocent Smoothies, it started in the 90s with a couple of guys in an office with floppy 90s hair. But what was great was they had a lovely timeline on their website. Even I have not looked for a couple of years, but they've sold, I think Coca-Cola owned them now. But they had the timeline of the pictures of when they started in the 90s. And the reason to this day, which I love, on the cap, I think it says "shake before you lift, take the lid off," because one of the guys come in hungover one morning when they were trialing their smoothies, and he took the lid off and shook it, and there's a picture of him covered in the smoothie. And that goes back to a tiny company. And I say it's that storytelling, it's the networking, and marketing often is seen to be a thing you turn off like a hose pipe when you need it. When I need to water the plants, I turn on the hose pipe, and it's not. And you'll know that it's a constant thing. And lots of these businesses are having to make a shift in their marketing, which you've mentioned with some of the, you know, what can we do to remain, you know, visible, that people still know what we're about. And I think this has been a very interesting time, hasn't it, how businesses have had to do that.
It has, and I think it's for me, so many you know, so many businesses and organisations and charities out there are having to change either what they do or how they do it. But what's vitally important is that they can still continue to be them. So they might be doing something different, but they're good, but they're doing it in their flavour. They, you know, they may have had to have changed how they operate. In sort of that they might be working from home. They might be offering, you know, a takeaway service now rather than, you know, serving people at a table, or, you know, they may now be offering different sort of products and services, but they've got to have their brand's flavour, and that is absolutely vital, because branding is all about trust. And actually, if you've got a really good brand, if people understand your story, and if people feel that they're with you, then actually they can accept what you're doing differently really easily. It goes back to like when Apple launch a new product, they're, even before they've told you what that product is, and maybe they've only seen, you know, shown you a tiny snippet of what the product's going to look like, you've got waiting lists of thousands of people waiting for this product to launch. And they do that because it might be something completely different. It might be something that Apple have never done before, but because it's Apple branded, people know that it's going to be good, and people know that they can, that, you know, that it's a brand that they can trust. And I think that goes all the way down to really very small businesses that are having to completely pivot what they do at the moment. As long as it's still got as long as their branding is still as strong as it ever was, and as long as it's their take on this particular thing or this particular product or service, I think then, you know, that's what people are going to, you know, sort of that's what people are going to see, and people are going to trust that straight away.
Very, very much so. And I think, say, if you are a small business, and it is about the person. People buy from people,
They do.
rather than. I mean, if you've got to know a lot of people and you decide to change businesses, if you decided to, let's say you owned a finance company, and then you stop that, and then you start selling fruit and veg or cars or whatever, people wouldn't necessarily care so much about the product. Sometimes it's about the person and those values that continue into whatever you do. And I think a lot of small businesses worry too much about appearing bigger than they are. I know I struggled with the kind of, oh, it's just me, but what do we put out? And the kind of I versus we, and I was chatting to somebody else the other day about that. And ultimately people buy from the people they get to know and that trust, as you mentioned. And I think really at the moment it's been talking to businesses about it's opportunities to pivot, like you've said, to adapt, but also to upskill. So I spoke to Teresa Ward yesterday, you may have seen, and Teresa, as she sort of said in the video, she was like, well, I do mindfulness coaching one-to-one, and in a room, a group of people, and I'm shielding myself because I'm quite vulnerable with my health. And she was very devastated, like, well, I've done all this and now I can't do it. And I was like, well, no, you've got an opportunity to, as much as you're a bit of a technophobe, you need to just go for it and see what happens. There's an opportunity now to do Zoom chats like this, to build up your audience, to introduce yourself. And as you mentioned with Apple's, that tribe mentality that people feel a part of that journey. Now that when she goes back to doing the venues eventually, once this changes, there's people will have joined you on that journey and been through that process. And I think looking last night, even big companies, how Match of the Day, I think is a great example. All the football's been postponed. Match of the Day, and you mentioned about keeping the same flavour, and this, they've had to carry on and think, well, what are we going to do about football? We can't just suddenly turn off the tap and not talk about it, because we've got all these people that want to know what we're doing.
Yeah, and also all these people that are absolutely desperate for somebody to talk about football, because they have got this, they have got this 3 p.m. on a Saturday through to, I don't know what time Match of the Day finishes, 11 o'clock, 3 p.m. through to 11 p.m. every Saturday. And normally, if their team wasn't playing, well, that didn't matter, because they were normally out playing footy themselves. Yeah. And it's just knowing that, and it's, I think it's understanding that gap is still there. Your customers are still there, and actually they want to know what you're doing. And everybody has been affected by this pandemic, and so as people are sat at home thinking, oh, I wonder how Auntie Jean in Manchester is getting on, they are also thinking, oh, I wonder how Paul and Clive at Word Gets Around are doing. People are thinking about the people behind these companies, and thinking, oh, well, I wonder what they're doing. And I think people, when you're a small organisation, if you're not still out there talking to people, I think people will think, oh, they've probably gone under. So it is, sort of those consistent, those consistent messages are really, really important.
Yeah, and I think all those, say the work that you do, working with people, is quite overwhelming today, how many touch points there are in print, websites, newsletters, social media, umpteen channels that people think they should be on, and it's about being on the right channel. It's with our magazine, it's always quite interesting with advertising and print advertising. We always encourage people to put a picture of themselves if you're a small business, because it makes you real. And I mentioned Adrian from Zero Dry Time. He's got a lovely big picture of him, his phone number, and he does really, really well out of it, because it's here. This is me. This is what I do. And it's there. And we've said to lots of people, it's about that trust. It's local businesses. Put yourself forward, and also, it's not necessarily saying, well, what would be more powerful is these days is about inward marketing. Inbound and outbound is about, inbound. You put things out there that offer value and advice that showcase you as the expert. This is me. This is some advice. Oh, by the way, I do this, and here's my phone number. And that works, really well, and encourage people to start to talk about the industry and start to engage, which a lot of people don't do.
And there's been a lot of conversation recently about, sort of the fact that now is the time to really be offering, offering advice, whether that's articles or blogs or how-to guides, and actually offering that up for free. And I know there's been a bit of a conversation around sort of intellectual property, and also people thinking, do you know what? I don't want to give somebody a step-by-step guide. because otherwise they're going to go and do that step by step, and then they don't need me. And actually, I feel the reverse is true, because at the end of the day, you get a massive delivery from IKEA. You've got a huge thing to build. You open the box, it's got 500 pieces.
Yeah.
You have a company that is offering two things. They're offering a video that you can watch, which shows them putting that thing together. And then they also offer a service where they will come round and they will put it together for you.
Yeah.
When you watch that video, there will be some people that will say, right, okay, come on, let's get on with it. But there will also be a lot of other people that would say, do you know what? Look how quickly they've built that. Look how competently they've done it. They're not trying to do those screws up with the back of a, with the back edge of a spoon.
Yeah.
They've got like a power tool. My God, that dowel went in really quickly.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know what? Next time we have a big DIY project, I'd rather pay them to come and just do it. And, and I think it's, just because you've shown somebody how they could do something, or you've given them lots of suggestions, it doesn't mean that therefore they're never going to need you. I feel that actually what that shows is that firstly, you're quite giving and compassionate, and you're not trying to keep it all to yourself. And secondly, you're proving that you've got knowledge and you've got expertise. And thirdly, you're really saying to people, look, if you've read this and you think, oh gosh, if only I had time to do that, or if only I knew a bit more about that, hello, here I am, how can I help? And it is that sort of staged, that sort of, that step by step, really.
No, I love that, and there's a really good example recently. So just as we kind of went into lockdown, our boiler decided to like go into some weird mode. I didn't know what it was, and so we rang British Gas up, and we were, because we weren't the most vulnerable people, we were kind of at the end of the line. It was okay. We had heat. The heater was kind of stuck on, which was a bit noisy. We had like a 3-week wait for somebody to come to fix it. So of course I got onto YouTube, what's this noise? What does this code mean? And a brilliant example was a plumber where he just gone, hello everybody, I'm Pete, and I've worked as a plumber for 30 years, and we're just going to try and fix this thing, and off he went and he filmed it all. And I was there going, right, okay, but the amount of hits that he had, and people thank you so much. And then he puts up, if you like this, like my Facebook page for more tips, and if you're like any profession that introduce you to people locally. We used to have it at a garden centre in our magazine. And I don't know why they stopped doing it after a while, but they used to give a little write-up about, it's springtime, now's the time you should be planting this, you should be doing that. If you've got any gardening questions, go to our Facebook page and ask us, and we'll be more than willing to help. And at the bottom, by the way, we've got bulbs on 3 for 2 at the moment. And that is so much more powerful than just putting, we sell bulbs, we sell trees, we sell gardening equipment, and I think some other people do struggle with exactly what you've said about giving yourself an advice and that position on a local level.
And that plumber guy that you were talking about, okay, so he's not going to get very many people ringing him up saying, that video that you did a really good step-by-step on, can you come and solve that problem for me? Because most people are now going to be able to solve it themselves. But you can bet your bottom dollar the next time somebody needs a brand new boiler, when they know there's no way that they're going to be able to install that themselves, he's going to be top of their list to ring, isn't he? So
absolutely, yeah. And that's the way, it's the way it's evolved. And I think it's been interesting to see change, particularly with social media and how that has allowed you to connect. And they are quite different. And I think some people think they need to be on all of them, and they don't. They need to be on the ones that are going to where their audience hang out and their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my biggest clients are the Taunton Chamber of Commerce, and I look after a variety of things for them. But really, the important two aspects of the work I do for them is looking after member businesses and also shouting about the good work that the Chamber of Commerce does. So it sits brilliantly with what I offer as a business. And actually, what we've really been trying to do at the Chamber is actually seek out all of our member businesses and find out where are they, what are they doing now, what are they doing differently, and most importantly, how can we help them do that. Now, for some of those businesses, it's been helping them to access money that they may be entitled to through one of the government schemes. We've had lots of questions from people saying, you know, if I apply for this, does it mean that in 2 months' time, when this is available, I can't apply for the second thing? And so we've been sort of really working with our sort of network of the Chambers of Commerce to try and help people sort of navigate that type of that side of things. And we've been trying to get as much of the government and the local government information through into people's sort of email inboxes. But the second real focus that we've had over the last sort of 8-9 weeks has been focused on helping to broadcast the news of what our businesses are doing, whether they're doing something slightly differently, or whether it is actually business as usual, because their business, they can more than easily sort of carry out that business at home. But it's also celebrating some of those fantastic good news stories that are out there, businesses that are struggling themselves but are lending their time or their expertise or money or products for some of the, you know, great local community initiatives that are going on at the moment. And again, I suppose that brings me back to sort of storytelling, and it is, you know, stories just are so powerful.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, as a chamber member myself, you might blush now, but I think the best decision they ever made was bringing you on board with the chamber. And lots of people watching this have had so much help and support, and you've really, really, you know, brought forward the Chamber of Commerce to what it should be in the 21st century. You know, it's very generally sort of very traditional, and lots of blokes stood around shaking hands, you know, and lots of people watching this, you know, and myself, you know, thank you so much for the work you've done, because you made it more transparent, more open, more accessible. You know, it's been amazing to see, and wanted to say that. Don't cry.
Cheeks blushing. Well, no, thank you for saying that. And I think, you know, sort of when I first started working with the Chamber of Commerce, it's funny actually, because somebody who I know quite well, who actually is reasonably open-minded and they're with it, said to me, "Oh wow, congratulations, oh that's amazing that you're going to be working with the Chamber of Commerce, oh my gosh." And I was thinking, well, thanks, loving your enthusiasm. And they were like, you know, because like they don't have women, do they?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And I think, you know, it is difficult, particularly when you're dealing with any organisation or any business that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
You've got the beauty of that brand trust and that heritage, and do you know what, that is absolute gold dust from a marketing point of view. But it is a double-edged sword, because it can, you know, sometimes you've got to be aware of cobwebs, you've got to be aware of sounding sort of old and too traditional. And actually, you know, the Chamber of Commerce as a global organisation actually does have that difficulty of having the word chamber, you know, as part of the name. Because actually, if you think about, you know, if you ask somebody on the street what does chamber mean, then whatever their answer is, it's not going to be modern with it and that type of thing. And right back to sort of when I started looking after the Chamber of Commerce, it was really important for me to make sure people understood that actually when these Chambers of Commerce first started, it was somebody who had too many potatoes in their greengrocer's shop who needed a really good return on their bank account. And so they spoke to their local banker, who actually was paying over the odds for their potatoes, and they came to some commercial arrangement. And there probably was no money changing hands whatsoever.
No.
And for me, that's what's really important. It's not a chamber of money or chamber of transactions, it's a chamber of commerce. And actually commerce can be financial, commerce can be product related, but it can also be help and expertise related as well. And it's and really the focus really for the Taunton Chamber is almost to be that cog in the wheel of connections between businesses. So it's been a real pleasure, you know, sort of working with them, and I'm hoping, you know, it continues to be sort of you know, a long relationship, because as I say, it fits, you know, so the work that I do for the Taunton Chamber fits really well with my sort of wider business ethos anyway. So
no, I mean, it has. I've loved seeing how it's evolved, and lots of businesses have been brought kicking and screaming maybe, and upsetting a few people from the old guard, as it were. And talking to Federica, leader of the Somerset West and Taunton Council the other day, you know, and it's been more accessible, more open, and it's not having all the kind of traditional ways of doing things. The world is changing, And I look at, the way that, the way the networking used to be traditionally in our networking group. You've been to it. People think networking is everybody stood in suits and blokes talking about what car they drive and that, and just kind of just posh dinners and stuff like that. And you can turn up to our event in flip-flop shorts and have a pint. It's about conversations and relationships. It doesn't have to have all that pomp and ceremony behind it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It is important sometimes to have that prestige, and you mentioned the heritage. That is important. I wanted to add that. But if you look, I mean, even like some of I know Minehead Town Council that I work with, to have councillors and then suddenly people want to film it on Facebook Live, and everyone's like, we can't do that. Why not? Because you need to be an open and honest society, So that's helped them to evolve, and it's been good to see the councillors in Minehead to change, and maybe younger demographic, more people involved, make it more, and politics has got more exciting recently. More people have been out to vote, and it's kind of it's been really, really good to see. So I think we're going to sort of finish there. It's been a lovely chatting to you, and we can chat some more, and I'll share the links to your business. I'd like to talk to you about, hopefully you've got some capacity to maybe work with us a bit more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm all for, I'm all for collaborations. I find that it's really good for the soul, and I always find I gain more from a collaboration than I give.
You do, and I think a lot of people do still see competition as as not working with them. Like to sort of finish on our networking group. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I don't care if there's 10 graphic designers in the room. It's brilliant because there are opportunities to collaborate, to tender for bigger projects. You can share, you can make friends, you can share ideas, share skills. And I think some people do miss out and think collaboration means you're giving stuff away, which is certainly so. Great. Well, I'm going to finish on the killer question, which I ask everybody. So the question is, if you didn't work within what you do with small businesses and marketing and events and PR, what would you do differently, or what were you told you might be when you left school?
Okay, well, I can't really remember what I was told when I was leaving school from a jobs point of view, but I think if I think if I could sort of wave a magic wand and have a different career, I think probably as a child I would have said to be a TV presenter, and I know that's sort of like laughable now because most of the younger generation just want to be Instagram stars, don't they? But for me, I had this real affinity with presenting in front of people, and I think again going back to that sort of storytelling, and as a child I was one of those annoying kids that wrote to John Craven's Newsround. I sent him a string of letters about what I'd seen on Newsround, again, record breakers, they always used to say, write in and ask us a question, and actually not only did I write loads of letters, but I actually got one of my questions answered by Norris McWhirter on the TV programme, and then got a really nice letter back saying, oh, hope you saw the programme with that on. So I think that's probably where I would have ended up. So
brilliant. I think a lot of people say to me, I'd have been a children's entertainer for all the silly things I think, and embarrass my children. So that's sort of
that's the whole point of having kids.
Absolutely.
That's a parental duty as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree on that. Well, lovely to catch up with you.
And you, Paul.
All online and hopefully soon at some events in due course. So
okay, take care, Paul. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.